How will this generation of students look back on their school days? This isn't how Maya Campbell-Black imagined her last year of secondary school.
It has been difficult because it's very stressful online and it's very demanding.
Maya is hoping to study medicine, her friend Dante Ross engineering. But instead of sitting GCSE exams this year, they're facing a whole new system of marking. It'll be their teachers who assess their grades based on coursework. Have you got any worries about the way that you're going to get your grades this year?
I like the teacher assessed grades because the teachers know who I am. What I worry is like when I apply for a job and don't want to look back and see what I got in my GCSEs.
My worries are, without doing exams now, how would that help me when I'm seeing my A-level exams without that preparation?
So your worry, Dante, is how employers will see you because you haven't sat exams?
Of course, so the people who have sat the exams will have a better advantage to myself who have teacher-assisted exams, which may not be trusted as much.
The changes come after last year's fiasco.
I'm not happy with the performing arts grade and the computer science grade.
When exams were also cancelled in England and replaced by an algorithm which took predicted grades but then adjusted them based on the school's past results. It was widely criticised for unfairly marking down children in deprived areas. The Education Secretary has managed to pull off a result that many would have thought impossible, given his rocky relationship with some schools over the past year. Unions have broadly welcomed his promise to end the algorithm and his declaration that he will now trust in teachers. It's a really unusual building, isn't it?
It used to be the Swan factory.
The changes have been welcomed by Maya and Dante's head teacher, Greg Williams. His school in the heart of Birmingham city centre has 600 pupils, with nearly 70% on pupil premium. Mr Williams thinks the new system will be fairer.
Really pleased and delighted. Certainly it shows a lot of trust in the profession.
There is a concern about grade inflation. How will you make sure that your teachers aren't giving good grades to their favourite students, perhaps not rewarding those that aren't considered good students?
First of all, we operate a very robust moderation process, and so each department moderates internally. That's then moderated by a senior person at the school. We work with other schools across the trust, and indeed in Birmingham, staff are professional and they're going to want to give an honest and fair reflection of the students' abilities.
How are you? Good morning, how are you doing? Hi.
The Prime Minister visited an academy in East Lancashire today and said in an ideal world he'd want to continue with exams as normal, but teacher assessments were a good compromise. When he was asked if he still has confidence in his Education Secretary, he gave this rather brief reply.
Of course, yes.
But one former schools minister, who now chairs a research institute, says the government has learnt the wrong lessons from last year.
They're in danger of lurching from the crisis over grading and the algorithm last year to a different type of crisis this year, which would be much more about a very large amount of grade inflation in the system and potentially inconsistency between the way in which students are graded in different schools.
After months of uncertainty, Maya and Dante and thousands of other students now know what will replace their exams. The government says their results will be published earlier in August to allow time for appeals. Darshna Soni, Channel 4 News, Birmingham.
Well, now research from the Social Mobility Foundation has suggested that just over half of students considered to be disadvantaged are worried that school-assessed grades will not fairly reflect students' capabilities. They want the government to implement a grade guarantee for those most disadvantaged. I'm joined from Birmingham by A-level student Renee Gardner. Renee, thanks so much for joining us. It's brave of you to do so. I'm wondering how you feel about the idea of teachers marking you in your crucial exams.
I feel quite nervous to some extent because if we were to do exams, it would obviously be impossible now. But I feel like when I go back to sixth form, I'm going to have tests in the class anyway, which the teachers will go off. So I am quite scared because I don't know what's going to happen. But
of course, at the same time, in looking at your exam papers, isn't the teacher going to be tempted to say, well, I know Renee, she knows this, she's done well, this is good, I'll do it? Or are you more worried that he's going to say, or she is going to say, yeah, she could have done better, I know her stuff?
Yeah, I feel like in some cases I'm better in stuff than other. So I'm a bit concerned that the things that I've done bad in might affect the stuff that I've done good in, if you know what I'm trying to say. But I'm hoping that the teachers can obviously see that I'm working really, really hard to try and get the grades that I need.
How well prepared do you think you are? I mean, has this last year been far harder than when you did your GCSEs, for example?
This year compared to my GCSEs is just horrendous. When I did my GCSEs, I'd say that they were so easy compared to this, especially being at home as well. I feel like I'm at such a disadvantage because I'm not getting the proper learning experience.
So if you could wave a magic wand, what would you really like to be done? I mean, how could they test, you know, how good you are?
I feel like if I had a wand, I would have made sure that students knew from months ago what was going on, because we've been living in uncertainty for many months. And I would make sure that a lot of work that we do in the classroom goes towards our grades, not just pure the mock exams we're going to do in the class and the tests we're going to do in the class. A lot of class work should be brought into it.
You know the teacher who's going to mark you. I mean, he or she knows you. And do you think there's a sense in which they'll understand your background and what you've been through and all the rest of it and factor that into their marking?
I think it depends what sort of relationship you have with the teacher, because some relationships are better than other relationships. I think some teachers will take into account like their relationship with their student, which will affect grades.
Now, you're going to be going back to school for the first time in a long time, in only a few days' time. What's it going to feel like? I mean, are you apprehensive or are you excited?
A bit of both, really. Like, I'm scared because I don't know what it's going to be like, but I'm excited to go back and like learn properly. But I'm just going to wait and see how it is, because when we went back last time, it was awful. But hopefully it's better this time.
Well, Renee, it's very sweet of you to talk to us. Thank you very much. And I'm going to wish you all the luck in the world for your exams. You deserve them.
Thank you very much.
Now, Sir Michael Wilshaw was the head of Ofsted and Chief Inspector of Schools in England until 2016. Prior to this, he was a head teacher for nearly 30 years and is now back teaching at a secondary school in North London. So Michael, you must have very interesting and conflicting feelings about all this. Tell me how you feel about this solution.
Well, the first thing I should say is that I'm really heartfelt sorry for this generation of young people, one of whom you've just spoken to. Fate has dealt them a terrible hand. And I'm sure a lot of them feel that they would rather have sat an examination and had the same experiences as previous generations. And they want the same opportunities as previous generations to proceed to university, to employment, and to really be treated fairly. And they will know that the present system is far from imperfect. There seems to be no other alternative to to the way youngsters are being assessed by teachers at the moment. But there will be grade inflation. There's no question about that. There was grade inflation last year, and there will be grade inflation this year, because teachers do, on the basis of what we've seen in the past, err on the side of generosity. And that is perfectly understandable. But, you know, we've got to worry about that in the way that David Laws just described, because we want youngsters to feel that their grade...
If there is grade inflation, and there's grade inflation for everybody, then surely all that happens is that you've got a slightly higher curve, but nevertheless, everybody's in their right position.
Yeah, but the youngsters themselves want to feel that their grades have validity and integrity in the way that previous grades did for previous tranche of students. They will worry that the knowledge and skills that have been recognised in the grade will prepare them for their next stage, for university or further education or for employment. They don't want to go on a course for which they're not prepared, although the grade says that they are. So they should worry, universities should worry. And the key issue here is we've known for months now that youngsters will not sit exams. Has the moderation process, which the head teacher you spoke to talked about, has the moderation process been robust enough? Have we prepared well enough for this situation? Have we got inspectors?
Well, let me ask you another question. Let me add to your questions. The question I'd ask you is, what about the leadership of Gavin Williamson?
Well, he's the Secretary of State for Education, and he has to take ultimate responsibility for what goes on. And I come back to the point I was just making. We've known about this now for months, that there would not be examinations taking place, and there would be a heavy reliance on teacher estimated grades, and that they would have to be really effectively and robustly moderated. So have inspectors been appointed by Ofqual to go into schools to really check that they are moderating these grades in a way that they should? Have we clustered schools together in the way that that head teacher described, so that really good schools can moderate the performance of other schools? Has this been done effectively? Because if it hasn't been done effectively, there will be rampant grade inflation. And it is ironical that, 6 years after Michael Gove railed against grade inflation and the robustness of our assessment processes, we've got it back with knobs on. And we've got to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Well, very briefly, do you think, in fact, that a major opportunity to reform the whole system of, examinations in particular, have we missed an opportunity to reform them in this period when we've not been able to run our schools?
Well, we've got to, and it's a point I've been making again and again. We've got to make sure that after this pandemic is over, we really review how well our education system is functioning, and really tackle the problems, the deeply ingrained problems that we've seen over the last few months, but also before that as well. So, for example, do we continue with a 3-term year and a 6-week summer holiday when we know that youngsters' performances fall away, particularly poor youngsters? Why don't we change that system, which is more linked to an agrarian economy than the needs of the 21st century? What are we going to do about the third of youngsters who are not academic, who do not want to pursue an academic pathway? What do we do about skills? What do we do about the underachievement of white working class youngsters whose needs are not being met?
So, Michael, you've left an absolute cascade of questions for Gavin Williamson to answer. He's not very keen to appear on our programme, but we'll hope to get him in and get him to answer some of those questions. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us.